please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator from Variety, Jenelle Riley.
Are you live streaming today? Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I just had to check with her to find out that we are live streaming today, so hi everyone at home too. As the nice lady told you, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm the editor at Variety, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to the SAG Foundation conversation with Steve Carell. This is an actor who has created so many memorable characters and performances over the years, from things like The Office to The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and then seemed to segue effortlessly into dramatic roles like Little Miss Sunshine and Dan in Real Life. Still, I doubt even his biggest fans were prepared for his transformative, breathtaking work in Foxcatcher. Please welcome Steve Carell.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I always love actors giving it up for actors, and that doesn't always happen,
Really
so that's
nice.
very nice.
Thank you.
You're probably used to that.
Oh, no.
Well, congratulations again on a fantastic year.
Thanks.
And because this is a SAG audience, I would like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
I was in John Hughes' last film called Curly Sue. And I played Tessio the waiter. And I didn't have any lines. Jim Belushi he would walk into this restaurant, and the maitre d' would say, "Tessio," snap his finger, and I walked up. And that's how I got my SAG card.
So no lines, but you had a name.
I did, and I worked for 3 days for just that one little bit.
Wow.
That's when they spent a lot of money on movies.
Exactly.
And now that would have taken about 3 minutes. So.
That's why it was John Hughes' last movie.
It was, yeah.
Took two. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant it was a long shoe. You guys are morbid. So I want to go back and start at the beginning. I know you grew up in Massachusetts, far away from the entertainment world.
Yeah.
You didn't have a family in the business or anything like that?
I thought you were going to say I didn't have a family. It's
It's
a really sad story. Grew up an orphan outside of Boston. No one. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a psychiatric nurse. My oldest brother is an architect, then another engineer, and then a landscape architect. So yeah, no one. I definitely went a different way.
So when you said you were interested in performing or being an actor, I mean, were you sort of the black sheep of the family? Did they know what to do with that?
Well, they didn't, none of us took it very seriously, including me. It was just something fun to do. It was never a potential career choice. My parents sent me through private school, and they didn't have a lot of money, but my mom worked nights, and so they afforded me this great education. So I felt like I owed them something that sounded better than saying I was going to be an actor, honestly. At that time, I thought, that's not a legitimate career choice in my head. I need to give her doctor or lawyer or something, to warrant all of this effort. And they're the ones who actually said, you should go for it. You really, after college, they said, you have to it's your life. You have to do what's going to make you happy. Don't, you're on your own. Go for it. So I really owe them that.
So your parents actually encouraged you to be an actor?
They did, yeah. They did, because they knew that it's something I always enjoyed doing. And I remember I sat down with my mom and dad, because I was applying to law school, and I knew they knew my heart wasn't in it. And I remember we made a list of all the things that I liked to do. Like, I played hockey growing up. Am I going to be a professional hockey player? Probably not. And acting always came up. It was always like an extracurricular, something that I always did. I always had fun doing. And so that was a reoccurring theme. And they said, you know what, just do that. Just at least give it a shot. And so I moved to Chicago soon after that and started doing plays and then worked at Second City.
Now, did they know you loved acting because you did plays in high school?
Oh, yeah. I started early on doing like silly things in class. I wasn't a class clown, but I liked to be part of, whatever sketch people were doing or whatever play was being put on by the class.
Do you remember some of those early roles when you had that moment on stage and realized
I was James in James the Huntsman. They actually wrote it for me in 3rd grade.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, Mrs. Gage, who was the head of the music department in 3rd grade, there was a music department, she wrote this thing called James the Huntsman, and she cast me as James. So that was pretty exciting. That was
From
a big
her
deal.
to Judd Apatow, you have people writing things for you.
I know. I should get the two of them together, Mrs. Gage. Yeah, but it's just something I always enjoyed doing. Something that was always fun.
And I know you were a radio DJ for a while.
Oh God, yeah, bad one. Yeah, in college.
Oh, it was college.
Yeah.
Okay.
WDUB. It was 10 watts. It was a 10-watt radio station. It literally, the college was on a hill in Ohio, and the signal barely made it off the hill. I mean, it was, and I had the morning shift. I was a college radio station, a 10-watt college radio station, and I had like the 5 to 7 a.m. shift. What college student is up at 5 in the morning? So I just started I would do like calls to friends, and we'd do characters and things. Nobody was listening. Nobody heard a thing. But it was just, just had free reign of this radio station.
And was it your sign-on name something like Sapphire Steve?
Sapphire Steve Carell, yeah. And that was actually to gently mock the guy that I interned with, who called himself Diamond Doug McKenney. Oh. So the first time he let me on the air, and I said, "This is Sapphire Steve Carell, interning for Diamond Doug McKenney," and he didn't really think that was that funny. But yeah.
Did everyone take on Jewel names after that?
No. That was the Jewel ended after that.
But you did keep the nickname.
Not really.
Not really. Okay. And what sort of career were you imagining for yourself? Did you know it was going to be in comedy, or did you think it would be a mix? Did you think you'd do theater?
Gosh, and this is going to sound so well rehearsed because I've said this before, but I honestly thought if I could make a living, and I didn't have a master plan. I thought if I could make a living as an actor, once I decided to do it, I thought if I could make a living doing it and potentially support a family, that was it. That was the success. There was nothing beyond. There was no bar set beyond that in my mind. And then when things happened, and TV, I thought if I'm ever on a commercial, oh my God, that will be it. I will have completely made it if I ever am on a commercial. I really felt that way. And I did a McDonald's triple cheeseburger commercial. It's my first, and I know they've just started issuing them again.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't even remember the triple cheeseburger.
It's pretty special. But, and I remember the commercial. I had my 2 hands, and I had a triple cheeseburger in each hand. And there was a guy behind me doing the 3rd hand, and he had so I had 3 arms, and I was eating these triple cheeseburgers. And I had to take a bite out of each one. Oh. And, new at McDonald's triple cheeseburgers. And nobody told me about the whole spit bucket thing. And so for about 5 hours, I ate, I must have eaten 10 or 15, at least, triple cheeseburgers. And then they said, that after they saw I was getting green, they said, "Did you want a spit bucket?" And I said, what is that? I would, if it's what I think it is. But then I remember I had fallen asleep in my apartment at about 3 in the morning. I thought I heard my voice. I fell asleep on my couch, and the TV was on, and it was my triple cheeseburger commercial. And I woke up hearing my voice doing the triple cheeseburger commercial, and I thought, this is it. I've hit the big time.
After shooting that, I don't know that I could ever eat at McDonald's again.
Oh, I still love McDonald's.
Yeah, sure. You just don't get the triple cheeseburger, maybe. Because they stopped issuing it after a while.
Not because of me. But
are you sure?
It's a limited time. It's like the McRib.
Which I've also never had.
They're very good.
That's not what I hear. And was it in college that you started to get involved in improv as well?
Yeah, I joined an improv group in college called Burpee's CD Theatrical Company at Denison University. And incidentally, it is the oldest college improv company in America. Yeah, it started the year before I came. So I was like I was the first group they auditioned for it. So yeah, I got into it, and I'd never done improv before that, but it was really fun.
I mean, it's such a specific talent. When did you realize that you had a gift for it?
I don't think I did. I really don't. The first time I tried it, I went to a high school summer institute for theater at Northwestern. I don't know if people are familiar with the Cherubs. I don't know. It's high schoolers from around the country go to Northwestern, and I took an improv class then, and it was the first time I ever tried it. And I remember every time I was on stage, my default was anger. I would just, and I think it's pretty common when you first, because it's very scary and frustrating and you don't know what to do. So I just got angry at people on stage. And I remember for a whole semester, all my scenes were me yelling at other people. And it was mostly, I think, out of fear.
Sure.
And just not really knowing where to go with it. So it wasn't, I don't think it was anything that necessarily came naturally, but I kind of tried to learn how to do it a little bit along the way.
I know on The Office, Michael Scott was a big fan of improv. Yeah. And I don't know that I would say his improvs were angry, but he was always pulling a gun.
That's based on a friend of mine.
Oh, is it really? Not.
There was a guy at Second City who always used to pull a gun during scenes. And he knows it, and he'll laugh about it too. But we actually let him, a scene got into the show in Second City because we all agreed we're going to let Ron pull the gun and then we're going to let him kill all of us in the scene. And that's what the scene was. It was this guy who was just really frustrated, like a teacher, and when you got the wrong answer, he'd kill you. And it was sort of an inside joke, like we're just going to give Ron his scene with the gun. But he gets to kill everybody.
Did he get it out of his system after that? Or did he keep pulling
No,
guns?
he still liked to pull guns.
Now, did you discover Second City and specifically move to Chicago for that? Or
Well, it was part of the equation. When I was in college, the Second City Touring Company came by and did a performance, and I thought, that looks like a lot of fun. Like, that's what I would love to, talk about sort of dream job. I thought that was just touring around the country, doing sketches and improvising. And then what I love too is, and we did it too when I was in the touring company at Second City, you'd be in a college town and we were all young and we'd say, hey, after the show, if anybody wants to meet us at the bar, and you drink for free all night because everybody from the audience goes and buys you drinks all night. So I learned that when I was in college. Like, that would have been it was fun. It was a really fun job. But it was part of the reason. I didn't move to LA initially because it was, I thought, really intimidating. And I thought I'd just kind of get lost. And the same with New York. I wanted a smaller pond. I just wanted to work. I wasn't looking to be discovered. And Chicago seemed a better fit because there's so much great theater, Steppenwolf, and at the time Remains and Organic. And Goodman. There were a lot of great theaters to work there too. So
did you ever work at any of them?
I did. Yeah, I worked at Remains and I worked at Organic, and Goodman, and a bunch of them in town. Yeah.
And during this time, did you have to take survival jobs, or were you always working as an actor?
Oh no, I worked at Houlihan's restaurant as a waiter, and then the Hard Rock Cafe for a couple of years.
Wow. Gave you good background for Tessio, though.
It did.
To be a waiter.
It did. Oh yeah, I nailed it because of that. It's probably why I was hired. Because rarely can you find an actor who has waitering experience.
And while at Second City, you obviously met so many amazing people, worked with so many amazing people. Is it true Stephen Colbert was your understudy?
Yeah.
Do you like to remind him of that?
All the time. He's amazing. We just did a Q&A. I went out, he and his wife are on the board of the Montclair Film Festival, so we got together and I flew out and we did a Q&A, and it was so nice to kind of go back through, because we've worked together a lot. We worked at Second City together, and then we worked on the Dana Carvey show together, and then we worked on The Daily Show for a number of years together. So I feel like our careers are always intersecting with one another, and he's a really good friend. I don't know if I've met anyone more intelligent, more articulate, and more talented than he is. He is, I think people are going to be really surprised when they see him, another side of him on his new show.
I mean, both you and Jon Stewart had amazing movies in the last year. Jon,
Yeah.
wrote and directed one.
Fantastic.
You obviously starred in, well, he starred in several films, but Foxcatcher. Does he ever feel sort of left out? You know, he's the slacker of the group.
Jon Stewart?
No.
Oh,
Stephen Colbert. Yeah.
I don't think Stephen feels in any way. I think Stephen is a really important person in our culture, and I think that can be said of relatively few people, and I remind him of that. Not that he needs reminding, but I'm really proud of him. I'm proud to have a friend who does what he does, and if he chose to, he could be in movies. I think he could do whatever he wanted to do. When he understudied for me, I played a baritone horn. Some people call it a euphonium in this show. And he'd never played a brass instrument. And in a week, he learned how to play the baritone so he could understudy for me. So that's the kind of guy he is. He just approaches things. He even said, and this really surprised me, when we were talking about his transition into this new show, he said, I'm really not a very political person. He said, I just assumed this character, and I learned as much as I could about what that character would know and how that character would feel. But for him to say he's not really a politically minded person was a bit mind-blowing to me, because he is such a figure in that world. He's a good man.
I actually saw him in Company.
I heard that was great.
Oh, yeah, he was fantastic. And there was a part of me that wanted his show to fail so that he could go on and have this great Broadway film career.
See, that's the kind of talent he has. He's a great actor. He's incredibly musically inclined. You know what? Why isn't he here right now?
Yeah, well, he is, actually. Welcome, Stephen Colbert. No.
Stephen Colbert, surprise guest. No, his ears are burning. I'm just a big fan, and it's nice to have friends like that.
And one of the reasons I bring him up is because I know you guys did the Dana Carvey show together, which was so ahead of its time.
That's what they say about failed things.
Well,
when anything fails miserably, it was just ahead of its time.
No, I remember watching it when it aired.
That was an unplanned spit take.
I'm just so glad it wasn't me. Well, actually, because I'm going to start laughing, like the very first thing I think ever aired on the Dana Carvey show.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yes.
The very first sketch was Dana as Clinton. And this is when presidents were still revered by the public. And he was doing like a press conference or something. He opened his shirt to reveal a prosthetic chest with 8 nipples. And I don't know if anyone ever saw this. And the nipples were functioning. They had tubes running to them. So he lactated. And to show that he was the most nurturing of all presidents, they put a bunch of golden retriever puppies on the table in front of him, and they went for it, and they were just sucking on his fake nipples. And that was the first image that America had for this show. And apparently they watched, and we followed Home Improvement.
Right.
So they started with this incredible number, and they watched the number just go. The show was basically over at that point. It was done. It was incredibly fun. The writing staff, it was Robert Smigel, Louis C.K. was the head writer, Charlie Kaufman was a staff writer, Robert Carlock from 30 Rock. I mean, it was sort of a who's who of comedy writers, and it failed. But it was fun. It was really fun.
It was ahead of its time.
It was a good experiment.
But I bring that up because I love it, and I always have to have that image of Clinton and the puppies. But because in a way that sort of led to your Daily Show job, from what I understand. Because I know Stephen Colbert had brought you up, and there was a producer who was was like, what would I see him from?
Yeah, Stephen kind of threw my name in the hat because they were looking for more correspondence, and Stephen showed her a tape of the two of us doing this bit we came up with called Waiters Who Are Nauseated by Food, which was based on my audition piece for the Dana Carvey show, which was a podiatrist who was nauseated by feet. And the podiatrist was basically like, oh, I see that you, oh God. And it was a guy looking at a foot and trying to kind of maintain his semblance of professionalism, but he just had a terrible gag reflex because he was grossed out. So that's what Waiters Who Are Nauseated by Food was, and she loved it.
Yeah.
And Stephen often points to that as something that really sparked his career too.
Really?
Like, yeah,
That
was
sketch?
That sketch was kind of the a lot of things resulted from that silly sketch.
Again, from your experience as a waiter,
Exactly.
resulted.
I owe it everything.
Thank you, Houlihan's.
Yeah.
So I actually want to take a couple questions from the audience, and forgive me in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Is it Satya? Satya? Okay. Who or what inspired you to get into comedy, and did you ever do stand-up?
I never did stand-up. I think I'd be terrible at stand-up. I don't think I have that. I just was in Palm Springs, and Chris Rock accepted this award. And man, to watch someone like that control a crowd and just have complete confidence, I just don't think that's my forte. But I really respect it. I think it's admirable and unique. Who inspired me? In terms of like a teacher?
Or just maybe some comedic actor or something that made you just get inclined into it?
I've told this story before. I had a second grade teacher who complimented me on my rowing in a second grade. Seriously, we were doing a
Show them the rowing. I saw it earlier. It's amazing.
It was a Pilgrims and Native Americans Thanksgiving, and I was a Native American rowing my canoe toward the Pilgrim camp. And I was sitting in a school chair, and this wasn't for an audience or anything, this was just for the class. And I took my oar, and I wrote it, and then I switched, and I wrote it this way. And I'll never forget, my teacher, Mr. Blackman, pointed that out and said, now, had he just run on one side, he would have gone in a circle. And so he switched to keep the canoe, and it's something that I hadn't thought about, and it really, it struck a chord. I just, to have someone, and not that I lived this terrible life that no one gave me credit for anything before, but there was something very specific about that moment. And all the other kids in class, I remember it so distinctly. They were like, yeah, he did that. That was so cool. And to feel really special because of it, I have to point to something like that. Those kind of supportive moments, I think about that all the time with my kids, and I'm sure I try not to support them with things I don't want them to end up doing.
So you would never encourage their rowing?
No. No, I think it was just an important moment, but in terms of actors, boy, I look at the work of someone like Peter Sellers or Harold Lloyd, or comedically, Jack Lemmon. There are a lot of people who have influenced me in that way, both dramatically and comedically.
So back to The Daily Show, because
Yeah.
we've gone 2 minutes without bringing up Stephen Colbert again.
I know.
But I understand he gave you some advice, actually, on joining the show, because you weren't sure you were comfortable, I guess, with
He did. He said you sort of have to. I wasn't comfortable because it scared me, and at the time the show was much more cruel, and it went after people that didn't deserve to be gone after. It was kind of shooting fish in a barrel. So he recommended that I assume a character, and which I thought was really, that it can't be you. You have to distance yourself from this, or otherwise it's soul crushing. And I went one step further, and I tried to make all the pieces I did at my character's expense rather than the people I was interviewing, because it's just, a lot of those people didn't deserve to be mocked or humiliated. Some did. There were some bad people. There were some intolerant and racist and awful people that we came across on that show. And I didn't have a problem with that. But the people that were just, and neither did Stephen. Man, he really would go after people. But it was those people that were just eccentric that I didn't feel warranted that kind of scrutiny and mockery. So it would always be at my character's expense, and I would be the idiot. And So I think that was good advice, to kind of turn it around and make it work morally for yourself.
How would you sort of describe the character you created?
I always thought of him as a guy who was a national news reporter who had been demoted to this cable station and was thought that he was better than than the material he was being given, but was trying to maintain his integrity through it all. That was kind of my idea.
And did you have that from the beginning? Do you remember?
Yeah,
the
that's
first
sort of what I
segment you did?
chose. That's kind of what I chose going in. I didn't really label it, but that's what I had in my mind.
Do you remember the first interviews or segments you did on the show?
The first one I did was a guy who thought Walt Disney had built a subterranean lair at Disneyland and was kidnapping children and turning them into mind control. Through mind control, he was turning them into slaves in this subterranean lair. So that was my first one. And again, you walk away going, oh my God, like how do we do this? Like, this guy has no idea. And that's when the show was meaner.
Yeah.
Because this guy was clearly off. You know, he was ill, and you just kind of feel dirty. Like, what's funny about this? It's just a sad thing. So again, you try to just put it on yourself and make it as silly about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time, thinking back, I can recall like some really seemingly dangerous situations that the correspondents would be in. Mm-hmm. Was there any time you were ever scared?
No, well, a couple times, not really. You know, I never did any. Again, Stephen got a couple that I remember. He was doing one. He did what are called stand-ups, where you do. And this is Steve Carell reporting to you live from, back to you in the studio. Those are stand-ups. And Stephen did one after he'd interviewed these white supremacists. He did one in front of a burning cross. And he, what was it? I don't know. He made some crack, and they were watching him do it. And it was one of these, get in the car. And they had to, and they chased him. They followed him. So it was, there were some, Vance DeGeneres was actually locked in a room. They went inside, and they kept the crew outside. The producer and Vance were invited into this room. They locked the door behind them, and they said, so what, you think we're funny? You come here to make jokes about us? And so they basically suckered him down there.
Wow.
And because they wanted to make a point. There were some times. Not for me. I did the Klingon speaker convention, So.
I was just thinking it was pretty smart of you to be like doing Produce Pete while they're off interviewing white supremacists.
Yeah, no, I'll stay in studio and do Produce Pete.
This may be a really stupid question, but I always wondered, why Produce Pete? We all knew you as Steve Carell.
Well, the full title of it was Produce Pete, Steve Carell.
Really?
That was part of the joke. I was Produce Pete, Steve Carell. It didn't make any sense.
It was ahead of its time.
Exactly.
We have another audience question from Jack Scullard. Did I get that right? Yep. Okay. I know you come from a strong improv background. How did you transition into scripted work? Did you have any training, and does improv help you with scripted work?
Did I have training in scripted? Like, yeah, I mean, I have a degree in theater from college, a double major in history and theater, because, history really pays off. I actually saw in like a U.S. World Report, they were categorizing the least successful majors to have, and history was by far history majors make less money than any other profession. Like, if you get a degree in history, it's the worst for money making. So I have that and theater. So again, my parents, thanks for all of those. Thanks for working nights for me, Mom. So yeah, I mean, I studied acting, so I did a lot of plays, and I did summer stock, and sort of fell into the improv, and really fell into the comedy, because I hadn't thought that was going to be my career path necessarily, but it's just those are the things that I got cast in. When I was in Chicago, I tended to get the triple cheeseburger commercial, and you know, I took classes at Second City and did sketch shows and did musical comedies and that sort of thing. So it was really by virtue of the things that I was cast to do. And improv I think it's a really interesting tool to use and I think a helpful tool as well when you start going off and doing other things, because even in Foxcatcher, Bennett, and I didn't expect this at all. I did not think that he would be this kind of director, but he encouraged it. We'd start a day and he'd look at the script and say, I don't think this is working. Let's just improvise this scene. So we had to be prepared to improvise within those characters, which I hadn't anticipated, but was great because sometimes we'd use the improv just to get to the nut of what the scene was about. Sometimes we'd use the things that we'd improvise, and sometimes they were a means to an end. But I think it can be helpful if you can just not think of it as trying to be funny. And I taught at Second City too, and one of the things that I tried to teach was, it's hard to teach improv, but one of the things I tried to instill was, don't let go of looking for jokes or trying to be funny or pre-thinking. You know, try to just remain in the moment. And I think that's helpful for any actor, is to just, you don't know where it's going. You're just along for the ride.
How long did you teach for?
A couple years. I was doing main stage there. That's where I met my wife. She was in my class. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Who are you? Yeah. She was the hot girl from Massachusetts at the back.
Also from Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was the deal sealer. Like, wow. You're all of this and the holidays, we're going to be just right there. Visit your parents, visit my parents. This is perfect. No, yeah. So, and she was great and so funny and so beautiful and smart. Yeah.
I was saying this earlier, but I was a big fan of hers from when she was on Saturday Night Live. And I know you get asked this a lot, but I think people are surprised to hear you never auditioned for Saturday Night Live.
I never got called to audition. No, I never. Yeah, I was overlooked. Yeah, but I got to host. That was pretty cool.
That's probably better.
That was fun.
Actually.
It was fun, but I got to see it. You know, when she was on SNL, she got cast on SNL a week before we got married. So we went back, we went on our honeymoon, and then immediately from our honeymoon, we moved to New York from Chicago so she could do that. And I was doing a play off Broadway that had been in Chicago that just coincided with her doing SNL, so we were both doing stuff at the time. But I got to go, you know, and sit in the writer's room when the show was going on and to see the workings of it, and it is a machine. Mm-hmm. That show is amazing to watch.
And during this time, when you were on The Daily Show, you were doing lots of other work. I know you were appearing on TV here and there. How are you at auditioning? I'm gonna guess it's been a while since you've had to do it.
I'm pretty bad at it. I was not. I became better at auditioning once I had a child, and I will never forget it. Because I put so much on it, and I worried so much about whether I was doing it right or whether I was the person that they wanted. And I was always trying to outthink what they wanted or were expecting this person to be. And Nancy had Annie, and about a week later, I got called out to a callback for the Julia Louis-Dreyfus show called Watching Ellie. And I was on cloud nine, and all I could think about was my new baby and my wife. And I was like in this state of bliss when I auditioned, and I nailed it because I just didn't give a shit. I was like, I just wanted to get back to them.
Yeah. And
it suddenly everything had a different context, and so I think I started auditioning better because I wasn't worried so much about figuring out what they wanted. I just did what I thought I should do, and just committed to it, and just figured if I'm not right, then I'm not right, and I'm not going to worry about it. It's interesting being on the other side of it too. For the first time When we did 40-Year-Old Virgin, it was the first time I was on the other side of the audition process, to watch people come in and read with them, and to see how some people just absolutely nail it, and how other people, by just walking in the door, that they're in trouble. And it's almost like dating, I think. If there is an allure to that person, and a sense of like, you want me more than I need you, that's always more attractive.
Yeah.
I really think that's true. But if there's this, I want this job and I will do anything to get it, please love me, there's something kind of off-putting, like, I don't want to love you. Like, no, you have to, come on, give me some mystery. But when people came in and were prepared, but were also just confident without being cocky, and just did it like, thank you, and were professional, and came in and did their job, and didn't work too hard for it. It was interesting to watch, and it's something that I thought about afterward, like, okay, I have to clock that next time I go in.
But obviously you care, or you wouldn't be there, so how do you sort of fake that, I guess, confidence, or
well, you
caring?
care, and everyone wants the part. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be in there unless you wanted to do it. But there's a certain, unfortunately, there's a certain desperation that comes off, that you want to feel like whoever you're casting is going to, on the day, show up and nail it, just like they're nailing it here. You want to have the confidence in them, and I think that's part of it, because there's a lot of money involved, and you don't have a lot of second chances, and you just want to be certain that that they feel good about themselves, and that they're not going to kind of fold. And I was exactly that. I was the one who really wanted it, but I wasn't cool about it at all, or I didn't have self-confidence about it.
Did you have any disastrous auditions, or?
Many. Mostly. I remember I auditioned for a Fox show, and it was one audition I felt like, you know what, I actually think that might have gone pretty well. I felt good about it. And I called my agent later and I said, any feedback? And she said, they hated you. Like, she was so honest. She's like they made a point to tell me that they really didn't like you at all. And I thought, I have to re-examine my self-evaluation technique. Oh, can I tell you my actor joke? This is the only joke I've ever actually written. It's a knock-knock joke, not a knock-knock joke. It's a screw in the light bulb joke. How many actors does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
6. 1 to screw in the light bulb, and 5 to say, why wasn't I submitted on that?
Only 5, you're being generous. You mentioned Watching Ellie, which was a show ahead of its time.
Yep, bomb, another bomb.
No, but it really was. It was a real-time concept. I mean, it had this crazy cast, Peter Stormare and you. And
yeah, Dawn Lake, and she is just, it was the one failed sitcom that Julie Louis-Dreyfus ever did, and I was a part of it. She is so great.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of hers. The premise was it was all done in real time. So for 22 minutes, which is how long a half an hour show was at that point.
should have called it 22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Get
Sorry.
mad at me. I had nothing to do with it. Yeah, it just follows for 22 minutes. It follows her. You watch Ellie. You just watch her go in real time through her life. And it was incredibly complicated to write. To write something in real time. And it was an experiment. It was interesting.
How were you able to juggle that with your Daily Show schedule, though?
They let me go for a couple of months and do that. I think they knew that I'd be back pretty soon.
Really?
Yeah. But they were always really cool about that. They, I mean, even when I left at the left, they said, if you ever want to come back, doors open. So that felt good. And I've tended to do that throughout my career, is to kind of leave, maybe on the early side, before I became complacent, because I loved the Daily Show, and Nancy worked there too, and I had a lot of really good friends there. But I just felt it's time, and I didn't have anything to go to, but I just figured it was time. And the same with The Office. I didn't have anything specifically to go to, but I thought, well, 7 seasons, that feels right for this character, and I figure I should move on.
Yeah, I think the people think that you left The Daily Show to do The Office, but it actually wasn't set up yet, was it?
No, not at all. No, I just came out came out here and didn't really have anything to do. So.
I actually want to touch on a couple movies you did before The Office, because obviously you made a big splash in 2003 with Bruce Almighty. I almost said Evan Almighty. I always get them confused. Where you did The Impossible, you stole scenes from Jim Carrey. But again, you're playing an Anchorman.
Right.
I'm starting to notice a theme here.
I almost didn't get it because of that.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Because they thought, well, you know, he's done. Well, I almost didn't get, because again, in Anchorman, I play another news guy, and I almost didn't get that because I'd already played in Bruce Almighty and on The Daily Show. So it had become sort of a theme for me.
Did you explain how many waiters you've played and how well that worked out?
I tried.
You also worked with Woody Allen.
Yeah.
In Melinda and Melinda.
Never seen it.
You've never seen it? I actually
No.
just watched it like 3 weeks ago.
How was I?
You were great, but because Chiwetel Ejiofor has a huge role in it before he did 12 Years a Slave.
I
There's
didn't even know that.
you
That
were
was the most frightening experience of my life. I had gone from Anchorman, which was really the first movie that I was in. I mean, Bruce Almighty, I had a couple scenes, but I was sort of in all the way. I didn't really say anything, but I was there for the run of the show for Anchorman. And I went right from that to doing this Woody Allen movie, and I was petrified. Can I tell you my Woody Allen story? There's a scene.
Yeah. I like that you asked permission. That's so nice.
There's a scene where Will Ferrell and I are playing basketball and talking about his life and his problems, you know, with the women in his life. And Woody Allen wanted to do, I feel like I can't say Woody because it's so pretentious. Mr. Allen wanted to first shoot it as a oneer, and then he said, you know what, then we'll go in and do coverage. And so it was a basketball scene. We're shooting hoops, and then we walk around and we sit down on a park bench and continue the scene. And it's probably a 5 or 6 minute scene. It was a long scene. And so he said, don't worry about getting it right. Don't worry about being, you know, word perfect, because we'll go in and cover it. So we rehearsed it, and then we shot it, and we were on the park bench after we finished. He yelled cut, and he came over and said, you guys good? Sure. Lunch. One take. And it was like, he didn't plan on covering it at all. He just wanted to make us, he didn't want us to be afraid of, oh, we're going to do a oneer for Woody Allen, which I thought was really smart. Took all of that pressure off, like, oh, good, they'll get in and they'll, you know, I don't have to get these lines perfectly, and he was happy with that one. It's not a hysterical story, but I thought it was.
No, it's amazing. And did you shoot that after Anchorman?
Yeah.
So the dynamic between you and Will, I mean, was it hard to not, you know, blurt out?
Well, I think, no, I think they liked the fact that we were friends in real life and that we had a, you know, that we had a chemistry with one another. So I think that was part of it.
And on Anchorman, I would love to see, I mean, I know there's obviously extended cuts and such, but the lines that didn't make it over I Once Ate a Big Red Candle,
Yeah.
like, was that always the only line, or did you?
There have to be 20 different. I ate insulation, I pooped a squirrel. You know, there were, it would just go on for hours. Yeah. And when you go from that to Woody Allen, it is mind-boggling because you don't poop a squirrel for Woody Allen. It's a very different temperament on that set and a very different mood. But yeah, I mean, for all of those, you know, for the second one too, there are hours and hours. They cut that Anchorman 2, they cut an entirely separate movie with all different jokes. The same story, but all different every joke is a different one. And there were 5, 6, 10 alts to every one. It was absurd.
Now, was it on Anchorman? Had you met Judd Apatow before?
No. Anchorman was the first time I met him. And at the end of it, he said, if you have any ideas for movies, let's get together sometime. So a few months later, I went in and I pitched an idea that I'd had. We talked about it, and he liked it a lot. And we spoke for probably an hour and a half. And he, said, well, let's continue. Let's think about it. And just before I left, I said, oh, there was this other thing. And it was 40-Year-Old Virgin. I said, it's a guy who, because there's a sketch that I tried to improvise at Second City that was basically this guy. It was the poker scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin of this guy who's playing poker with some buddies, and they all start regaling each other with these sex stories, and he tries to enter the conversation, but he has no frame of reference. And so he's saying things like, oh, when you feel a woman's breasts and it feels like a bag of sand, and all the other guys are going like, what? What are you talking about? Well, kind of like a bag of sand. I don't know, some, you know what I'm saying. And he tries to just get by, and they finally call him out on it. So I pitched that to Judd, that scene. I said, I think to have this guy who's my age but hasn't experienced that, but he's not a weirdo. It just passed him by. Yeah. And he said, I can sell that tomorrow to Universal. And he essentially did. He was shooting a movie with Will, and over the monitor during a take, he mentioned it to Mary Parent, and she said, I'll buy that. And so it was so fast. Wow. They signed us up to write it. We wrote it over the summer. We turned it in on a Friday, and they greenlit it on Monday. It was like, I know. It was crazy. But the bad part is you start thinking, oh, this is how it happened. Never again.
And all that said, didn't they try to shut you down at one point?
They did. They did. After the first, I didn't know you knew that. They did the first week. They were getting dailies, and it was mostly me creepily riding a bike and me creepily walking down the street, looking at posters of women with big boobs, and it was they were like, right in the middle of a day, we got a call. They said, Judd came in and said, we're going to close down. We're going to shut down today, and you and I have to go to Universal. And so we drove over that day, and all the executives were there shaking their heads like, what? He looks like a serial killer. What is this movie? This isn't funny. This is like really dark, and who's he going to kill? And they did not see it at all. And so we kind of talked our way out of it and said, these are establishing shots. There was no scene work that had been done yet. Me peeing on a wall. What's going on? This is not funny. And we sort of, pulled our way out of it. But they didn't have a lot of faith in it until the first preview. I remember, and I had actually heard this like a couple of months ago. Somebody, like some insider told me that they had spoken to an executive who said, oh, yeah, we're going to bury that movie. Like before it came out, oh yeah, that's going to be nothing. We're just going to bury it somewhere. And then we went to the first test screening, and it rocked. I mean, it really played well. And you could see the Universal execs at the back going, oh, there might $sign. But so it changed. Yeah. I mean, and it obvious, but they didn't know. I mean, to their credit, they signed us on to do it, and they hired Judd, who really didn't have any directorial experience, and I was nobody. So, I mean, I do give them a lot of credit for taking a chance.
Well, it's also such a testament to the movie because you hear the concept, or you just even hear the title, and you kind of think you know what you're in for,
yeah.
And then there's this sweet, funny and sometimes dark, but like really good-hearted movie.
It was raunchy and good-hearted, I think.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like the title, I remember going back, after I'd shot it hadn't come out yet, I went back to a high school reunion. And what are you up to, Steve? Well, I just shot a movie called The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I could see eyes rolling back in their heads, like, poor guy. That is so sad what happened to his career. Because the title does seem. Titles are weird. Titles are tricky. I never wanted to call Crazy Stupid Love Crazy Stupid Love.
love that title.
I hate that title.
Oh.
I hate it because I feel like it limited the appeal, like right out of the blocks. Because are a bunch of college dudes gonna go 7 tickets to Crazy Stupid Love? Not really. I mean, unfortunately, it is. I think it does limit, and we went around and around and around in terms of titles for that movie.
What were some of the ones you rejected?
There are literally thousands. Go Big or Go Home, which is one of my least favorites. I don't know. The Wingman was one of them, which I thought it was bland, but it might have had a more general appeal. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
I love that title, Crazy Stupid Love.
I hate to ruin it for you.
I'm going to ditch my DVD now. Of course, we have to talk about The Office. You spent 7 seasons playing Michael Scott.
Thanks. I hope I'm not being too boring.
Yeah.
God, you guys are like spending your Sunday night. I'm like, wow, so nice.
They could be at like another screening of The Imitation Game. They're very happy. To be like, hey, no offense to The Imitation Game, but not a lot of laughs. So for this role, you earned 6 Golden Globe nominations, 1 win, 6 Emmy nominations, and 12 SAG nominations. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, you seared the catchphrase, that's what she said, into all our minds. You are responsible for that. Were you a fan of the original British series?
I never saw it.
Really?
Yeah, and I still haven't. And I always said I would after the show ended, but then I didn't. I don't. But I just thought, I got the call to audition, and I remember Paul Rudd telling me, this show is awesome. You know, you have to see it. And I remember watching probably 5 minutes of it and watching Ricky and thinking, if I watch another second, I'm going to be doing an impersonation of him for my audition. And I can't, that's not what it can't be that. It has to be a different version of that template. And that's the only way I thought it would be successful. And so that it wasn't out of anything but that. I just wanted to avoid any sort of imitation.
Did you audition only for Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know a lot, I know Rainn Wilson auditioned for Michael and Dwight.
Yeah.
And how long was the audition process?
Boy, I went a few times. I think I went probably twice. I met with Greg Daniels and we sat and just talked for a while. And then I remember reading with Rainn and a couple of other people, but I kind of knew Rainn. Yeah. Rainn was going to be the guy for sure. And then the callback was like this. The network audition was the coolest network audition ever because there were no network executives anywhere to be seen. They had a camera and Ken Kwapis, who's the director, and you, and the person reading, and it was or the other actors, you know. And it was just like a work session that they were taping. But what I didn't know is that it was like closed circuit TV. In another room, there were 20 network execs, you know, scrutinizing everything. But it just felt like a work session. And it was playful and fun and funny. And just had a chance to kind of loosen up and fool around with it and get a sense of what the character. It's hard, you know, trying to start something from scratch and figuring, well, where is this going to start? And the trajectory of, you know, you can't show everything in the first episode or the first 6 episodes. So, like, how much are you going to limit yourself to? And it was challenging.
One of the things that you achieved with that show that has also sort of been a recurring theme in a lot of your work is this fantastic ensemble.
Yeah.
I mean, just flawless from top to bottom. Was that chemistry pretty instant, or did it sort of build as the show went on?
No, it was pretty instant. It was. And I think you can attribute that to Greg. He just knew the right people to cast with one another. He knew that we would get along. I don't know. He just had a really good sense of personality and how it would all unfold, I think. Or he just got lucky. But that was a great group of people, and we were very, very tight. That was hard to leave because they were, you know, that was a family. That was really special time.
Do you, Michael, elicits such strong reactions out of people that sometimes he does really sweet things, and other times he's just terrible.
Yeah.
Did you ever worry that he went too far, or did you like the guy?
Yeah, I mean, too far? No, I think I always was conscious of, it's hard. It's hard, especially when writers sort of graduate from a show and go off and do other shows. So the kind of the writers that you started with and the tone that you started with can change over time when you have different writers and we have different showrunners and things. You want to kind of hold on to what you originated. And so I think that was the challenge, trying to kind of stay true to those characters and to have the writers, because sometimes writers would start as fans of the show and they would write scripts as if they were a fan of the show as opposed to a writer of the show, because they're different things. And you don't want to see Michael say "that's what she said" 5 times a show. It's
maybe you don't,
but you know what I mean? It's like you can be too much of a good thing, and you have to select your moments, and you can't also write something for a character just to elicit a laugh. It has to be within the parameters of what makes up that character. And so it was, I think, a learning process for everybody. And I think as a show goes on, it becomes harder to maintain that.
By the way, you mentioned you saw Chris Rock today.
I did.
Has he ever seen your imitation of him from the
I
show?
don't know. We've never talked about it.
I should say Michael's imitation of him.
Right.
It's a terrible imitation. I have a question from Rhoda. Over there. Wants to know, what's your favorite episode of The Office and why?
Boy. There's an episode called Benihana Christmas.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Where Michael, they pick up 2 women from this restaurant, from this Asian restaurant, and Michael can't tell them apart. So he uses a Sharpie and he does that on them. Unbeknownst to them, he marks one of them so he can, and it's the grossest thing. And Harold Ramis directed that episode, and I was a huge fan of his. And what a sweet guy. And he fell into that world. He directed a few episodes, and was one of those people that immediately fit in, and everybody loved and got it, and understood all of the chemistry and the tone and the pacing of it. Amy Adams, she actually replaced somebody. Really? She was not, they cast another woman, and this rarely happened, but after one day, they had to let this other actress go, and they brought in Amy Adams on Tuesday. And talk about, and I'd never met her before, and I thought, she is going places. And because she was one of those, because that camera awareness, that being able to look to the camera, was a really specific ability that it was especially hard for people who had not done the show. But she had it immediately, that she had the awareness, but she played it with such subtlety. She was fantastic. We had a lot of good, Amy Ryan came in and she was fantastic as well. We had a lot of great people that came in.
Except she was your sister and Dan in real life.
Did that creep you out?
A little? Yeah, a little bit. After the success of The 40-Year-Old Virgin, I'm going to imagine every broad, raunchy comedy came your way, or maybe not. But you chose to do a small independent film, Little Miss Sunshine, a supporting role, no less. And I know a lot of actors have had trouble moving from comedy to drama, but it seemed to go pretty smoothly for you.
That was a good year. That was fun.
Understatement.
One of the producers from Anchorman advised me not to do Little Miss Sunshine.
Really?
She read it. She said, "You don't have enough to do. You don't have any lines." Like, are you kidding? I'll sit in the back of the van with Alan Arkin for 6 weeks. Come on. Like, who would want to do that? No, that was, again, like this ensemble of people and I've stayed close with all those people as well. Just completely generous. And that's where I feel most safe, is when I'm surrounded by people who just care about making everybody else good in the movie. And that's one of the things we learned at Second City too, like in the improv part of it, is that your job is to make everybody else good. And if they're doing the same thing, everybody's set. And to feel that kind of support, and on The Office, same thing. I love the ensemble aspect of this.
Another theme I'm noticing is that you do these things that completely exceed people's expectations.
Oh, yes, I do, all the time. No, I know exactly what you're talking
No,
about.
40-year-old virgin. 40-year-old virgin, you said they tried to bury, or they
Yeah.
thought they were going to bury. It became this, global hit. Little Miss Sunshine was, I think it was made for like $12 million.
Yeah, or less. It
Yeah.
didn't-
Went on to win an Academy Award. You guys won the Thank You SAG Ensemble Award.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was huge.
Did you have any idea it was going
No.
to explode?
No, even when we saw it, I remember we all went to a screening of it in a screening room over here, and we all walked away thinking, that was cute, that was good, that was no idea. And then we went to Sundance, and it got this great reception, and we were all so surprised and blown away. But yeah, it struck a chord somehow. People liked it. Those are great directors too.
Yeah.
John and Valerie.
And from what I understand, they didn't make you audition. They knew you could play this role.
I met with them at Jerry's Deli, and we sat and talked about it, and that was it. It was one of those scripts that you read and you think, don't change a word of it. And everybody felt the same way. And I don't think a word was changed. That one had no improvising. That was just, it was, I thought, it was so spare and so specific. All the characters, they didn't say very much, but everybody knew who these people were very specifically.
I want to touch actually on your voiceover work, because obviously you've done characters in movies like Over the Hedge and Despicable Me. You've created another indelible character. Is it harder than you expected?
No, it's way easier.
Is it?
Yeah. It's
Finally, someone admits it.
kind of great. Come on, you go into a room, I'm the guy, here I am, and you do that for a few hours, and, it's great at kids' parties. Hello, everybody. No, it's fun. It's so freeing to, and, I'm sure you hear this type of thing all the time, that when you're limited sometimes as an actor, it can be the most freeing thing as well. If you can only use this, it forces you to use all of this thing that you can. And if it's just the voice, you can feel free to go crazy with it and try all the different permutations of a voice. And I think it's a great exercise as well for an actor, because they're not seeing you. And it's really for the animators too, because now it's in their hands, it's their imagination, and you're just giving them tools to work with. And again, I think it's an ensemble that way, because when I'm doing it, I'm thinking, I'm going to give these guys and women 100 options on every line, and they can do with it what they want, and they can, and in terms of volume, in terms of over the topness, in terms of the rhythms, just because I don't know how it's all going to fit together, and because you never get to do any dialogue with anybody else too.
Really?
So you never hear anybody else's voice. It's all just your stuff. So it's kind of cool, because it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you're just trying to figure out your piece of it. But it's exciting, and again, I'm thinking, what are they going to need? And I want to give them every option that they could possibly want or hope for. And I'm also going to improvise a bunch of stuff that, if they want to use it, great, but I'm just going to give them options that way as well too.
And where did you find the voice for Gru? Was it a character you did before, a discussion with the director?
No, we went into a session and we just started playing around. I wanted to be kind of a nondescript Eastern European thing, and seem silly and a tiny bit ominous, because I really, and we actually, I have to say, those guys too were so great about my input just in terms of character design, because they had this design. The initial character was very angular and dark and thin and had this long chin and these brooding eyes, and he was scary as hell. And so they said, you know what, too scary. So they made him into kind of a roly-poly, lovable, and I said, now you've gone, I thought, too far the other way. There has to be somewhere in between. There has to be, kids like a little bit of edge, and I think that has to be appreciated. Kids, you have to give them credit that sometimes kids like stuff that's just a tiny bit dark, and they will get into it. So they thought about that, and they came up with the look for Gru that was comic, but at the same time there was something dark about it.
Yeah, he's kind of Edward Gorey-ish.
Yeah, yeah. They're really smart, and I'm telling you, the Minions, that is a marketing genius stroke. Wow. Come on.
I hope you get a cut of that.
Oh, yeah, right. No,
Buy stock in the Minions.
No, they did a good job.
Sort of related to voiceover, Vinny Donadio, did I get that right? Does the difference in energy between the ADR stage and the set make looping more difficult for you?
The difference in ADR stage to the set, sometimes it's an opportunity to improve upon what you did, because sometimes you go into an ADR stage and you listen to it and go, oh, no, that's not what I was hoping it would be. But generally, it's better on the day. I mean, generally, whatever happened that was organic to that scene or what was going on between actors. Know who's really good at ADR is Alan Arkin. He is renowned as being one of the best. He can loop something perfectly, those as the beeps beep you in one time. It's like, because he's a musician, and I think so much of it is musical too, to hear how the line plays. He has a really, really good ear for it. But it's fun. The weirdest part is when you're dubbing it for airline use, and you're dubbing some swear, like whatever, some swear, and you're, gosh darn it, and it always sticks out. I know Adam McKay tried to do a whole movie by putting in really silly, like not even trying to match, like, you cow takers, things that had nothing to do, and Paramount or whoever said, no. They saw a cut, they're like, no, you can't mock that. You can't mock the gratuitous language in it, no.
I have a question from Philip, because I want to make sure I get to Foxcatcher, and I have all these movies I have to tear through. So I'll let Philip ask the question for me, which was, what was your experience like working with Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones?
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Again, I was petrified. Because it was these long, it was in Hope Springs, and I was playing this therapist, and I had to drive these scenes. It was mostly my character driving through and asking them questions and kind of setting the tone of it and setting the rhythms of it, and Tommy Lee Jones is a very intimidating person to begin with.
Yeah.
You should know your lines for sure. But he was really nice. I mean, he was very, very kind to me, and she is an absolute. I mean, I'm sure everyone said the same thing. She's just a remarkable gem of a person, as well as being, the best actor ever. But I'd watch her too, and it was hard. The most difficult part of it was not becoming an audience member in those scenes, because you watch her and you think, oh my God, look what she's doing. That's so cool. Like I remember this was between takes. She just started, she did this. She went like, and she went through this thing that she was going to do during the next take. And I was watching her like, where's she going? And then she did this thing. They were talking about this ill-fated encounter they had in a movie theater where they were going to try to do something kind of frisky. And it was the funniest improv I've ever seen. And again, She's a great improviser because everything she improvises is completely within character. She's not going for a laugh. It's all on point and in character, on story. I don't need to talk up Meryl Streep, but it was remarkable and scary. It was frightening, but exhilarating to work with people like that.
Really liked your performance.
Oh, thanks.
One movie I just have to bring up, because it's a personal favorite, is the incredible Burt Wonderstone.
You and 3 others.
And there, well, having dated a lot of magicians, having gone through a magician phase, it's hilarious.
You dated a lot of magicians?
A lot.
How? That is the oddest. You need to write a book.
No one would believe it, honestly. No, yeah. And then you realize, there's actually, I think, an episode of News Radio where she realized it wasn't really magic, and it like killed it for her, and there's some truth to that. And I believe David Cross played the magician.
Oh, really?
In question.
Yeah.
But I mean, I see this movie, and I am shocked that nobody has thought to do a movie like this before.
Yeah, it didn't really play. It just didn't.
It did in my house.
Well, it was one of, you take a shot, you think,
Yeah.
oh, that could be funny, this down on his luck guy, and he's sort of pompous, and, you never know. You take a shot. I remember I brought an early cut home to Boston, and I showed it to some extended family. I showed it to Nancy's family, and you could have heard a pin drop. And I thought, oh my God, we are in trouble.
Really?
And it's you try, you give it a shot. I think Steve Buscemi and James Gandolfini. I mean, there were some great people in that, and it was it was fun.
And you were a producer on that
I was,
as well.
yeah.
And so were you involved top to bottom, casting, script?
Yeah. You take a shot. You never know. You never know. You honestly never know how something's going to turn out, and you try. You do your best, but they don't always come out the way you would hope that they would come out or are received.
Well, and you were also a producer on Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah.
Same thing. Were you involved in the casting process?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that title. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep saying
No,
it.
it's fine. It's fine. I remember it was weird. That was another one weird casting. Like I met Ryan Gosling and I thought, yeah, sure. I didn't really know him very well, but I met him and I thought, this is a great guy. And we probably talked for 3 hours, and he, I am such a huge Ryan Gosling fan. He is, honestly, he's one of the nicest. Here's my Ryan Gosling story. It was Friday. We were wrapping for the night, and we were talking. What are you doing? I'm hanging out with my wife and kids and soccer games and stuff. What are you doing? Oh, my band has a gig. Oh, where are you gonna have a gig? He said, we're playing a nursing home in Glendale. I'm like, damn it, you're a nice guy. You're like, but it wasn't like for anybody to know about. It wasn't to be publicized. He said, yeah, they really. These seniors really enjoy it, and we love it. And I'm like, man, he's just a good dude.
Yeah.
He's a really soulful, good person.
And something that I don't think a lot of people knew before that movie, he's really funny.
He is really funny. He has great timing, and he was nervous the first day. He was nervous about that. Like, I'm in a comedy. I feel like I have to be funny, but no, I think he's great. I think he could do anything.
So that brings us to Foxcatcher. It's such a fantastic performance, such a great movie. Do you remember the story of John Dupont and
Vaguely.
the Schultz brothers? When it
Yeah,
happened?
I mean, when it was first talked about to me, I vaguely remembered it, but I didn't know all of the ins and outs of the story.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you become aware of the film, and what drew you to the role of Dupont?
My agent submitted me to Bennett Miller, and I don't think I was on any list that Bennett Miller had to play Dupont, and I guess it gave him pause. He thought about it, and he sent me the script and called me in, and we had lunch and talked about it, and then the next day I was offered the part. So it was sort of out of the blue, and it wasn't anything that I was positioning myself for. I didn't look at a breakdown and think, John Dupont, that has me written all over it. But I was happy to be called in. But I also didn't go in thinking I have to impress upon Bennett Miller that I'm the right person to play this. I just really wanted to have a discussion with him about the character, about all of these, about this triangle of a relationship. And it was intriguing to me. It was a fascinating story. And the more I researched, the more fascinating it became, and the more textured and horrifying, really, the whole story became to me.
Have you played a real person before?
Just myself. No, I never have. No, and that was different too, to have footage on a person and to be able to study someone, because usually a character is out of your imagination or based on whatever script and stage directions, and to look at a person and think, oh, that guy has a very specific way of talking and moving and looking, and when we're going to start with that, and I'll emulate that and try to capture some of that essence in the performance. It's a kind of a spooky thing and scary. It was scary for me. I won't lie. It was intimidating to work with someone like Bennett, and I didn't know what to expect with him at all. I thought, this guy is dark and weird, and because I didn't know. You meet someone and based on his previous movies, which I thought were great, but he is so heady and deep, but we've become really good friends. He's a really funny guy, and he is a great collaborator, and all of these ideas that expectations that I had were completely pushed to the side, and it was, but still it was scary and daunting to try.
And I know Bennett said that the physical mimicry wasn't, a priority for him, and yet he said you nailed Dupont's gestures, the look, the movements. How did you set about achieving that?
I just watched, I got a lot of footage on him, and he had a documentary commissioned about himself and about Foxcatcher.
The one that's in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually that documentarian is the original documentarian. It's the real guy that interviewed Dupont and the Schultz brothers and the other wrestlers there. And on the day of shooting, he had his original handwritten cards from the real time that he interviewed all of these people. So there was footage on him. The most interesting part where I got to see raw footage of the documentary that they didn't put in the documentary. So it was more of a behind the scenes, him talking to the documentarian and him instructing the crew on how to set lights, and that gave a little glimpse too, because it was a different guy. The guy that was projecting himself on camera was a different person than the one off camera.
And what was it like on set? Because I know you had to show
Hilarious.
up. Yeah, it's a laugh riot.
It was that into Anchorman 2. Very little difference. It was as you would expect. It was really dark. It was, plus the fact that Nancy Schultz came and visited the set a few times,
wow.
and Mark Schultz was there quite a bit of the time. And I think out of respect for them and just out of respect for their generosity for being there and supporting it and for availing themselves to it, I think we all felt that way as well. And it's weird talking about, because these are real people and this is a true story, and you don't want to be cavalier about it. And and it's nice to hear how people responded to the film, but also it's like it's strange taking credit in any way, because this is somebody else's life that's being depicted. It's strange.
And I'm sure it was very isolating because, first of all, you're in like 3 hours of makeup a day.
Yeah.
And then by the time everyone else gets there, you're probably in a completely different mindset.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, by the time everybody got in, I was sort of already in that look, and then it would take me an hour to get out of it, so they were all gone by the time. No one, I was rarely seen as myself. Most say 98% of my time there was in that character.
I know Channing said he didn't think he really met you until the Cannes Film Festival
Yeah.
when the movie premiered.
It's true.
I mean, were you
I felt the same way.
intentionally staying in character, or was it just sort of a byproduct?
It was sort of a byproduct. I don't think any of us thought we're going to go to Pittsburgh and not talk to each other, aside from in character. But it just kind of happened that way. You know, I was in this look. The guy who drove me from the hotel to set did not talk to me when I had that stuff on. And that was my first indication that it was affecting other people around me. And Channing and I just naturally, and Mark too, we just sort of stayed clear of one another a little bit. It wasn't, I mean, we were cordial, but we didn't want to become buddies because that did not reflect the relationship in the movie at all. I think we all felt to have that a little bit of tension and unease, because I think the movie has that from the beginning. There is a definite unease to it.
Like the whole movie has this impending sense of dread that is uncomfortable in the best way.
It's a Christmas film.
Yes, exactly. The good family entertainment.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I felt the same way when I first saw it. It has a mood to it. It's a very atmospheric movie.
Mm-hmm. And I sort of asked this about Michael Scott, but I mean, what was sort of your take on Dupont? Because I know a lot of people dismiss it as, you know, he was crazy or he was creepy, and in a weird way, my heart actually kind of breaks for him.
Me too. I think he was sick. I think beyond everything else that's written and said about him, I think he was ill. And part of what is so tragic to me about him is that he was isolated by his wealth. So he didn't have anybody around him. He didn't have any friends, true friends, that were going to step up and have an intervention for him if they saw red flags. There was no one in his circle that would do that, because essentially they were all employees. And in that way, they were all complicit in his illness. And that's incredibly sad when somebody who I think really did need help and needed someone to intervene didn't have that person in his life.
Were you able to let him go at the end of a day, or did he sort of?
That one kind of stayed around for a while, and I don't want to sound pretentious about it, but yeah, that was. I mean, I still think about it, and about the experience and about him as a person.
Would you say this was your most difficult role to date?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and Get Smart.
Thank you for bringing us out of that. I heard a great story about Get Smart. You went in for a meeting and you thought it was an audition?
I did, yeah. I went in and I had my little satchel with my headshot, and they said they want you to go to Warner Brothers to audition for Get Smart. At least I heard the word audition. I remember going into a conference room, and here are all these executives and the president, like, wow, the president of Warner Brothers and an audition? This is weird. And I literally had my hand in my satchel, like, with my headshot, Steve Carell, hey. And I was about to say, do anybody have sides? And Jeff Robinoff, I remember he said, so we want you to play Maxwell Smart. And my head just went, boo. It was the first time that I didn't audition for anything.
Really?
And I was like, what's happening? I just walked out on like this, of course, got on the phone and Nancy, oh my God, you would never believe what just happened. So, yeah.
That story does not surprise me, because everybody says you're the nicest person in Hollywood, and surprised and humbled by your own success. Yeah. And so I am curious. I mean, how do you sort of keep your head in an industry that isn't known for?
Well, I'll tell you. I don't know. None of this weird big time stuff happened until I was in my 40s. So I kind of think I was a fully formed person by that point. And I have a family, and I have 2 little kids and a great wife. So that was my life, and that is my life. So all of this has been really astounding, and I'm so grateful for it. But I think I was who I was and am at that point. But bless you. So it wasn't. Yeah, you see? You see? I'm a human being.
They're just like us.
See, that's the weird thing. Like, to say someone's nice is like, shouldn't everybody just be... But you know what I mean? It's like, that shouldn't set anyone apart. I don't know. I don't wear that like, yeah, I'm one of the good ones. Just like, that should be expected behavior, I think. So, anyway.
Speaking of one of the good ones, I know you just did another movie with Julianne Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freeheld. She plays she takes such risks she's great. I feted her last night.
Was it last night?
Last night.
Oh my God.
I know, at Palm Springs.
Feels
And
like
it's
3
so
weeks ago.
easy to say nice things about someone you genuinely love and admire, and she's one of those people. She's in this. She stars in this movie with Ellen Page, and they're a couple, and it's about domestic partnership, and it's a true story about this couple living in New Jersey, and how her character gets cancer and is dying, and they are not going to give her partner her benefits. So it's a very tragic but uplifting story. I play this crazy attorney that comes to their aid, and it was quick. It's just a week, but it was from my part. But just nice to work with her again.
And what else is up next that you can tell us about?
Well, I had a movie booted because of a movie I was supposed to do with Gore Brevinsky called Pyongyang, and that was the plug was pulled on that a couple of weeks ago. Really interesting story, and we were set to shoot in Serbia in like a month and a half. We'll see. You never know. Maybe someday.
Could you shoot it in Toronto?
Toronto doesn't look like North Korea.
No.
No, they had to find some place that looked like, Cold War era. And so Serbia fit the bill for that. So we'll see.
So what I'm hearing is there's a break in your schedule. So if anyone has any scripts, just kidding, sorry.
Just stick them under my windshield window.
But I've heard rumors that there might be a Get Smart 2, or is that just...
Really?
Oh, no, really?
I have not heard that rumor.
No.
Really? No, that's...
It's on IMDb, which I know means nothing, but I got my hopes up.
What?
Yeah.
Something inaccurate on IMDb?
Right? It also says you own a giraffe farm, so...
A what?
A giraffe farm.
A giraffe
That
farm?
was actually Wikipedia.
That one is true. No, I own a general store, but I don't own a giraffe.
You really do?
A general store,
See, this
yeah.
is the one I didn't believe.
Yeah. You'd believe giraffe farm over general store? No, I own my wife and I bought a general store, like a 150-year-old general store in our hometown, Massachusetts.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, that's fantastic.
No, it's cool. It's my sister-in-law runs it, and we sell penny candy and coffee and muffins, and it's exactly. It's very cool, and I just and it will never make a dime, but it's one of those things because there was one not too far from where I grew up in Massachusetts that closed when I was still a kid, but it was a gathering place, and there aren't many of them, and I figured I'm just gonna buy it, and my brother's an architect, so we shored the place up and made sure that it wasn't gonna fall down anytime soon, and people use it, that whole neighborhood really congregates there. It's cool. I mean, it's just nice. It's nice to walk in and feel people enjoying it, sitting out on the porch. It's very hometowny. It's pretty. It's neat.
Do you ever get behind the counter and come out and serve people and
No.
surprise them?
No, but I go down a lot.
Yeah.
I hang out there, and yeah, it's fun. It's just fun.
Well, with your free time, maybe you can hop behind the counter for a
Sure,
few days.
yeah.
But whatever it is you do next, I look forward so much to seeing
Oh,
it.
thanks.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks. Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming.
guys.
It's really nice. Thank you.